Okay. Good evening. This is February 11th and a special meeting of the Board of Education. Tom, please take the roll.
Fred Sanchez.
Here.
Larry Riles.
Here.
Tom Soto's here. Anthony Borelli.
Here.
Rick Biaggi.
Here.
Mark Eggerman.
Here.
And Bob Johnson.
Here.
Dr. Heinz will be joining us shortly. Our next meeting will be on February 25th, and it will be a regular board meeting with a closed session starting at 5:30. Of course, should anything change, notice will be given. We have one item on the agenda tonight, and that is the delineation of the superintendent profile by School Exec Connect. I'd like to thank Dr. Martin for providing his complete rundown of the activities and timeline of the search process thus far. Dr. Martin's communique can be found in the packets. Before we start, let's ask Mr. Riles to lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance, followed by public comments. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Larry. Before we proceed into the agenda, I ask if there's anybody in the audience who'd like to come to the podium and speak on a non-agenda item. Not seeing anybody, we'll move right into our agenda. And that is the presentation discussion of the new superintendent profile conducted by School Exec Connect. Harry, hello. Gary?
Thank you.
Hello. Yeah.
I'm going to start. Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you again for the opportunity to work with you to find your new superintendent. We really had a great experience working with people in your district. I do want to single out Joel and Bernadette because, to say the least, they're so well organized and so helpful in everything that they did, and especially in terms of communication and getting the word out about this search. I've already apologized to Bernadette, but I'm going to do it publicly because Bernadette, at the point that we had a little bit over 200 responses to the online survey, was thinking that we should have 4 times that many, and I wrote back to her and said, Bernadette, that's unrealistic and unprecedented. Well, it isn't anymore because given all of the communication that was done, we have over 800 online respondents to the survey. And in addition to that, although I would say that the weather had a chilling effect in both senses of the word on the numbers of people that we were able to gather for our focus groups. Those who did come out to the focus groups really did were very, very engaged in the process and gave us very good feedback. So we appreciated everything that was done. So we're going to start. First slide is, I don't know, Bob and Mark, if you want to.
That's fine.
You're fine? Okay. So first, conduct focus groups with following stakeholders. We met with district building administrators, teachers, staff members from all schools, community leaders, students union, parents, community, PTOA leaders, and everyone was, I must say, very, very engaged and very interested in the process. And then we conducted the online survey, and overwhelming numbers, over 800, and we'll get into the actual numbers in a minute. And this was all done to create the new profile. So how will the profile be used? The board, interview committees, consultants, Gary and I and Diane, and you want to acknowledge Diane's presence here with us tonight as well. The three of us will be using it as we screen and conduct interviews. The board may choose to use the profile report to find out more about the thinking of the district's consultants, and we will use it to, again, screen candidates. And the candidates, depending upon how much of the profile the board decides to make profile, the candidates may use the profile report to find out about strengths and challenges of the district. And we'll talk about a little bit about what options you may want to consider. So, summary of the data that was collected. We did conduct 15 focus groups, 135 participants total, and with the online survey we had 821 separate responses. Again, an incredible number. Sampling errors we note, and in cases of percentages we round up to the nearest number. So the focus groups and survey questions. What are the district's greatest strengths and attributes? Why would a new superintendent want to come to this district? What are the district's greatest challenges? What should a new superintendent know before he or she accepts this responsibility? What should the priorities be for the new superintendent? And we tried to say what would be the most immediate priorities walking in the door. What are the most important characteristics and skills the new superintendent needs to possess to be successful in this district? And again, we always try to emphasize that we were talking about what skills, attributes that person would need to be successful, particularly in a district like this, based on their particular knowledge of the district.
Excuse me, Gary, do you have another copy of this?
Oh, sure.
Thanks, Gary.
So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gary to go over the data with you.
Okay, first of all, as we delve into the data, I want to let you know that we'll be providing it in both ways. We're going to share first the results of the data that was gleaned from the focus groups. Now, these were, again, 15 different meetings that were held with different constituents. We met with students, we met with parents, we met with staff members, teachers, and administrators over the course of the last week and a half. As the survey summary showed, 135 people overall participated in providing the input. So we're going to share that information first. Once we share that information, we'll then share the online data information so that you can see by comparison what was said in the online survey. Then we'll provide you with what we summarize as and call the profile then. So this is just the information that leads up to the profile, again, first as the focus group data and then finally as the online data. So we asked the same questions of all the groups, first one being the strengths. We compile the data, and by doing this we are looking for trends. Obviously we're asking 135 people these questions. You're going to get a variety of responses. I also want to mention, with the presence of your superintendent here, that when you take a look at this data and information regarding what we're looking for, what you're looking for in your next superintendent, this is not any reflection on Dr. Heinz by any means. One of the things that we typically notice is that, as you do with any kinds of elections or change in leadership, there's a pendulum that goes this way and there's a pendulum that goes this way. So if you see things that may look like they may be significantly different, don't be completely surprised, but we'll talk about that as we get there. So regarding the district strengths, these are not listed in any particular order, but I did try to categorize them somewhat. The first two that you see have to do with the community. The first one being great community, steeped in traditions, connectedness, established families, and so on. The second one is an attractive suburban location. Now, interestingly enough, the question is asked, what are the district strengths? Okay, part of the district strengths is the community in which the district lies. Okay, and that's something that, as I see some nods around the table, is affirmation that almost to a group, these were some of the first things that were mentioned. Also mentioned then was that you have engaged parents who like to be involved in their children's education and support quality education. The fact that, again, it was consistently mentioned, excellent, talented staff consisting of committed, dedicated, and passionate people. This you will see consistencies with the online survey. The staff was very highly rated as the strength of the district. Quality students who perform well and provide a variety of opportunities. Harry and I both had the opportunities to meet with groups of students, and we could not say enough about the pleasure they bring in interviewing students, how they feel about their school.
I just have to interject
Please.
something here, because over all of the searches that I've done in elementary districts and high school districts, I have never had a group as good as your student group. And they were just so in tune and so articulate and so thoughtful in the answers that they gave us. It was really, really an extraordinary group of young students, and I think they represented your student council and some of your other student leadership groups. Just a wonderful group of young people. Should be proud of them.
So then beyond the students, people feel that this is generally a fiscally sound district that has plenty of resources, and then also that there's a strategic plan in place. People saw that that was a strength of the district as well. Again, this isn't meant to be completely comprehensive, but these were the top responses that we heard from the groups that we met with. So I'm going to continue to move, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to stop me while we're moving through these. So the next question then was, what were the district's challenges? What does the new superintendent need to know before accepting this position? Interestingly enough, it wasn't uncommon for one of the first responses to be communication. Just so that you know our method of working with these focus groups, communication is a wide open thing, so we would ask further, what do you mean by communication? So that's where then you see the response that you see there, and that is quality communication between and among all constituents, ensuring better knowledge and understanding of district matters. Another district challenge is a sense of instability at the board administration level due to elections and high turnover impacting quality leadership. There were times, and again, I don't mean to editorialize, but you need to hear what we sensed from the different groups. Some people feel that there's a certain degree of chaos that is going on for a variety of different reasons. And this was one of the ways in which it was characterized to us. The roles of the board, administration, and staff seem to be becoming less defined. Seems that everybody seems to be interested in doing kind of everybody's job, and people aren't staying in their lanes as much as people would like to say. In fact, that was the exact verbiage that was used numerous times, is staying in lanes. Reacting to vocal minorities, not necessarily representative of the community at large. Again, these are being listed as what are being viewed as challenges that the district is going through. Perception of too many curricular initiatives and add-ons impacting the focus on the whole child. It was shared with us, there's a mindset in Park Ridge that there was always a focus on the whole child. Those of us who are educators know what that means, what that stands for, and there's a feeling that the district has gotten away from that focus on the whole child with various initiatives that have been introduced.
What would be examples of like the initiatives, I guess? So you're saying, Gary, that
Sure.
you're saying that there isn't a focus on the whole child, but then too many curricular initiatives, and that I'm trying to sort of put those two together.
Right. Too many that are getting the district away from that focus on the whole child. The whole child is what many would consider to be a basic, well-rounded education where students have the essential subjects, reading, math, science, social studies, etc., and then a fine arts program, and that there's more attention being given toward reading, math, and science. Some of this is because of what the state and other initiatives are, but different districts handle those things differently, and there's a sense that students are getting fewer opportunities than they once had when there was more of that whole child focusedness. I'm sorry, Bob.
No,
that's probably the
that
best.
answered the
I hope
question.
that helps.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Gary, so I can understand.
Sure.
It seems to me a struggle between not good and evil, but core and non-core programming. So was that emblematic in staff? Was that emblematic in community? Where was that emblematic coming from?
Well, again, this is meant to be a cross-section where we heard the trends. Yes, we heard it more so from staff, but we did hear it from parents as well. So we didn't hear that from students, I will tell you that. That wouldn't be an expectation of students because they're obviously in the programs that they're in. But it was something that we heard enough that, almost a going back to, if you will, staying away from where we're heading. But again, please also understand, some of this is due to what state's requirements are, and also a focus on test scores and performance that is dealt with in a variety of different ways.
I would just say this, it's typical. I would say, to generalize about it, that we hear it almost everywhere we go, that especially teachers feel that there's too much on their plates, and that programs keep getting added to their plates and nothing keeps getting taken off of those plates. So it's a general criticism, I think, from teachers, not just here, but everywhere, and sometimes then it gets reflected by the parents having heard this from staff members.
So just to piggyback on Tony's question from a moment ago, for both the strengths and the challenges, I know your job was to keep these generally anonymous and not to try and divulge, where some of the stuff was coming from. But were there trends with some of these answers where, pick one of them on there, was that more of a parent issue versus a staff issue versus an admin issue versus a board issue? Are there any of these in here, or were these really truly cross sections or
These are the more
averaged out?
cross section, Mr. Biaggi, because again, if it was just an isolated group, although it's important to know, it's not a trend across the district. We're trying to look for trends that the majority of stakeholders felt were prevalent.
So this really was representative of all of the constituent groups that
Absolutely.
spoke to you.
And again, you'll see it more so in the online survey, and when we share, again, the numbers of people who took these, it's interesting data more than anything else. And it should be viewed as that, as data. This is information for you as board members to hear when your constituents are being asked, how are they responding to these questions? So continuing on, is to restore and rebuild trust in the special education program. It's being viewed as a challenge in the district. Also addressing aging facilities combined with a focus on increasing space for increasing enrollment. And then the last piece is exploring options to provide full-day kindergarten. And I don't think any of those are any surprise to any of you, that these were things that are being brought up as challenges that people see forthcoming in your district, if not already here. Okay. The next piece is the priorities. So basically the way we frame this question when we meet with groups is, if your group could meet specifically with the new superintendent, what would you say are those things that they need to address in that first year that they're on the job? And basically, these are the things that were shared. listening to everyone and learning about the district, its history, and its strengths and challenges before taking action. In other words, that one we oftentimes can describe, this is not unusual for us to hear this, as a listening tour. The new person needs to come in and just truly hear what people in the community have to say about your school district. Develop sincere, authentic, quality relationships where all constituents demonstrate that all are valued. Okay? There are some groups that feel that certain groups are valued more than them. Now, again, some of this is human nature. We met with a variety of different groups, and the different groups all felt that other people are listened to more than them. Parents feel that teachers may be listened to more than them. Teachers may feel that parents are listened to more than them, etc. Point being, everyone needs to be listened to as much as possible to truly hear those things that are going on. Creating a clear, consistent communication plan that provides clarity for all stakeholders. Again, for whatever reason, people feel that there's a lot of information that floats around this district, and that which comes from the district leadership, if you will, in some kind of routine manner, are those things that they would benefit from more regularly. New superintendent being visible in all the schools while assessing both the climate of the buildings and the quality of the programs in those facilities. Again, people feel that just the presence of people in those schools sheds a lot of information about those schools. And then finally, the last one, providing opportunities for board member development that focuses on their roles and responsibilities to the entire community and especially to the students. It was felt by many that that's something, especially knowing that the board is going to be transitioning, you're going to be having new board members, that all board members together can benefit from that, and that should be a priority of the new superintendent to ensure that that occurs. Okay? So those are those priorities that were gleaned from the focus groups. Oh, finally, the last piece were the actual characteristics and attributes that people would like to see in their next superintendent. And again, some of this may sound redundant, some of this may sound overlapping, and I'll just continue to move along until you either slow me down or stop me, and that is to share that developing quality relationships with the board based on mutual respect is something that people would like to see with the next superintendent. Someone who's a high-quality communicator and who is empathetic. That word empathetic came up numerous times to all. Someone who's a superb listener, speaker, and writer. Someone who's a collaborative team leader who builds strong relationships and develops a sense of community through consensus. They'd like to see an experienced educator, not necessarily another superintendent, but an experienced educator that has a deep understanding of teaching and learning at all levels in the school district leadership, and especially special education. There were isolated responses where people felt the next superintendent needed to have a strong special ed background, but I would say those were more isolated. The fact that people felt that they should know about special education, but they didn't necessarily need to be a special educator to lead your district.
How would you guys define an experienced educator? You know, what's an experienced educator?
Sure. An experienced educator is someone who has served in a variety of capacities within a district and has experienced at different levels those things that occur within a district, whether they be a teacher, because sometimes, especially this day and age, you get some educators who did start out as teachers, they go right into administration because of their background. But an experienced educator in our minds is somebody who was a teacher, who was a building level administrator, typically a principal, somebody who may or may not have had central office experience as well. And then, you know, ultimately, if they were a superintendent, yes, but they don't necessarily have to have been a superintendent. But they've got a good number of years and experiences. And the way we find that is, so what have you done at the central office? What roles do you have? What things did you experience as a central office administrator? There are some people who have been building principals in large districts and large schools that have had many experiences that central office people have. So those are the things that we would ask in an interview to see how experienced and seasoned one is in the role as an educator. Okay? Thanks. Sure. Someone who's a genuine, authentic, warm, and caring person, and who's approachable and trustworthy. Again, these sound like soft skills. If you're a board, thinking that we need to get somebody in here, that is going to, lay down the hammer or the gauntlet. A lot of the soft skills came out as characteristics that people would like to see in their next superintendent. However, also someone who's an active leader, prioritizes visibility in the schools and in the community. And then it was not uncommon for it to come up that it should be somebody who is a thick-skinned individual and someone who doesn't get flustered by criticism or disagreement.
Are these qualities and attributes that you hear in other surveys? I mean, I can't imagine this is unique to us.
It's not unique. That's the benefit that we have in doing both the focus groups, though, and the online survey. When you see the online survey and you take a look at what some of the people share, that kind of prioritizes things a little bit differently because their people were able to rank and or respond to a variety of different items. So,
is there anything here that stuck out to you that's different from some of the other survey results you've done in other districts?
the thick-skinned actually was something that was more unique here. And the other piece that came up a few more times than not, and that is the board-superintendent relationship. Yeah.
Thanks.
So, anything else, Harry?
No, those are the two I would have pointed to.
So now switching over to the online survey, and again, I was shocked when I saw after we had closed the survey how many respondents there were. Of the 821, and keep in mind, if you try to add up the percentages and say they don't add up to 100, it's because people could check more than one box as far as who they were representing. So somebody could be a parent and a teacher, or a parent and a support staff member. So it won't add up to 100, but 63% identified themselves as parents. I wish we would have had one more parent actually sign on and fill out the survey as a parent, because we had 499 respondents, which again is a phenomenal number. We don't get that number in entire surveys of districts. You had that many parents alone. Teachers, we had about 200 teachers completed the survey for your information. 11% community business members, support staff. I will tell you the other, we could delve down into what the other was. Many people of that 4% identified themselves simply as residents. Okay, so when you think about it, they're not a parent, they're not a teacher, they're a resident.
Or they didn't want to identify themselves as anything else.
Correct. So those were the demographics of those who took the survey. For the different questions, for example, district strengths, this question was worded as list the 5 most prominent strengths of the district. So they could literally check 5 different boxes. And for that, these are the items that had the most hits, if you will, of 20 different discriminators. So what you see here are what we'd call the top 9. And you can see already that the first one is the quality of teaching staff, 64%. Now keep in mind that, of teachers, you had a small less percentage of those who even took the survey. Oftentimes, if you have a higher number of teaching staff and then you find out the quality of teaching staff is number 1, that's something that was not the case here. Your parents, and that was also confirmed from our focus groups, that they felt you've got an extremely strong teaching staff here. But then it drops off from 64% to just under 40%. To the community support of education was the strength. And then all of these are kind of bubbled in that 25 to 40 range. You had community supportive education, the use of technology for learning, the school learning environment. And again, these are all positive things. Student achievement. Interestingly enough, communication with parents and community. This is the only single item because it's got the same discriminators for strengths and challenges. This was the only item that showed up on both as a strength and a challenge, which I think is noteworthy as far as the survey is concerned. Student-centered learning, fine arts programs, and then the image of district. Beyond that, it tails off to 15% or less. These are what we would view as those things that people responded to as the greatest strengths of your district.
So Gary, if I can
Please.
just go back here.
Yep.
On district challenges, which I assume these 2, 4, 6, 7 bullets on the district challenges would be the top 7, if you will, the preponderance, the higher statistics, the higher ratios, the higher percentage of replies for that.
Yes.
Just so I understand on district challenges, what was the options that they had to fill out? Was that freehand? Was that bullet points they filled in? Or was there a number of choices?
Okay, so far, the only challenges that you heard were those that were shared at the focus group, so there were no choices. It was a give and take. We asked a question, they raised their hand and started sharing with us what they thought were the challenges.
Okay, so that's-
the next slide will be the challenges that were on the survey.
And the reason why I say that
Sure.
is because, so these are your focus groups, the people who attended the focus groups.
Correct.
And yet on the
Online survey?
survey,
Sure.
and I specifically go to the curricular initiatives and the add-ons impacting the whole child, but yet when I look at the fine arts programs on the survey,
Yeah.
it's outside of the top 5. So I'm just wondering if you could remark to that. So does that imply that maybe some of the people who are at the focus group were focused on that particular item? Is that potentially?
I'm not sure the fine arts would be considered something, when I said that teachers typically feel as if there are too many programs that are added on and not enough taken off. I'm not sure that they wouldn't see fine arts as something that should be part of the core curriculum. So I'm not sure that fine arts would necessarily be something that they would be saying shouldn't be part of the regular program. It's more of the smaller, discrete programs, maybe within language arts, maybe within, some of the major programs that there are add-ons and not subtractions. So I don't think it would relate to fine arts program myself.
So they're really two separate things?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think some of this may be a little bit more clear when we take a look at what the online survey shared as far as the district's challenges or barriers. Interestingly enough, spoke to the quality of district administration and principals. If we can go back to the conversations that we had in the focus groups, felt a high turnover of administration that there's been has diminished to a certain extent the quality that people may have been used to once upon a time. That would be what we would draw from that. Again, we were just the outside observers listening to the information and trying to put some sense to this. Mr. Borelli, to your point, the second bullet, emphasis on mastery rather than test scores, the focus being more on what's being taught for tests, PARCC tests, and other noteworthy kinds of tests, that there's not as much emphasis in the joy of learning, if you will, to put it in terms of teachers and or even parents, that we're working the kids too hard to perform well versus working them too hard just for the sake of learning, if that makes sense, is how I'm trying to describe that. Okay? The third bullet having to do with a challenge to your district, diversity, equity, inclusion. Your district is viewed overall as a fairly homogeneous type of demographic. Not many minorities, not many different kinds of people, and the fact that many of your staff members also live within the community basically demonstrates what many would consider to be a lack of diversity as well. Okay? That's what that one refers to. Board governance, I think, speaks to itself regarding the fact people see that as a challenge, the overall leadership roles. The school facilities was there. Fiscal management was listed. It was also through the focus groups was considered to be somewhat of a strength. And here, only 20% saw it as a challenge. Many of this information from the online survey, because people could write some comments down as well, had to do with taxpayers just being aware of high taxes. Short and sweet. The other pieces, again, are curricular in nature. Interesting instructional methods that engage, challenging and state-of-the-art curriculum. These are things that people saw as challenges. And then here we saw the communication piece then again as a challenge. It was a 28% saw it as positive, 18% saw it as a challenge or a barrier. And finally, a collaborative environment. So these were the top items. Again, the listing goes on to the other items, but they're mostly 15% or less. These are the ones that were most significantly identified on the survey. Okay. Looking at the actual characteristics and skills for a new superintendent, again, based on a survey, people could list 5 out of, again, a list of about 20 different things. They'd like to see somebody who builds good teams and brings out the best in other people, somebody with a deep knowledge of curriculum and instruction and student learning, someone who's student-centered, empowers staff members, is collaborative, and includes others in decision-making, holds himself and others accountable, has an inspiring vision for the future, has warm people skills and is approachable, and has excellent communication skills. Thinking in advance to a question that was asked earlier, how much of this do we see that's unique here versus what we see in other districts where we do searches? This is not an uncommon list of things that people would like to see. These don't necessarily speak directly to Park Ridge. This is what people would like to see overall with leaders that we do searches for school districts. Okay. Then finally, the last piece was where people could write in what they felt should be the priorities for the new superintendent. And again, excuse some of the redundancy, but there were consistent themes that we've heard throughout. High visibility throughout the district and community being important, strong, authentic relationships being developed. Someone who'd come in and evaluate all educational programs and practices, identifying those essential elements for a quality educational program, then also including the consideration of full-day kindergarten for all students. Assessing the overall quality of your facilities was something that was consistently brought up and something that should be done within that first year, especially relating to your space issues regarding enrollment increases and or the possibility of full-day kindergarten, as well as just up-to-date learning spaces. Someone who would create cohesive teams of administrators, board members, focused on working together in the best interest of students. And then finally, that quality communication plan was brought forth again. So, in a nutshell, you've heard consistent themes throughout. Communication pieces, someone to evaluate facilities, someone to evaluate your programs, someone who is highly visible, approachable, and so on. These are the things that we heard, and whether it be in the focus groups in person from people or via the online survey. We take all of this information and then we try to condense it into what we consider to be the profile, and that's what Harry's going to share with you next, unless you have any other questions.
Just one question. Do you know the survey And just thinking about the diversity aspect and just, I know and I don't know the numbers, but I know we've had a growth in, English as second language students and everything. Did people have an ability to fill out the survey in a language other than English?
We didn't offer it in anything else than English? No, we did not.
Thanks.
Nor did we hear of any concern that it wasn't being offered
I hadn't
in
thought of
another
that
language.
before, but-
There are some places that we hear that, and then we address that as quickly as we can if it's even a concern. Was not mentioned.
Thanks.
So the profile is what we would use and that we recommend the board uses. These are the attributes sometimes known as what is needed for the person to be able to walk on water. Your list will be a larger list than most because we had so much more data than we have had with some other searches. So let's just go through. Oh, you've already done it. So the first one is a highly visible someone. The person should be someone who is highly visible throughout the district and community and develop strong, authentic relationships that will serve as the foundation for quality collaboration. And again, I would say, regardless of whether we've had little data or much data, this one is one that typically comes up in almost every district that we've done. Genuine, empathetic, warm, and caring person who is approachable and can develop trust throughout the district. A people person, someone who is going to be able to be engaging within the schools, with teachers, with parents, and externally with your external constituents.
If I could interject just briefly there. The thing unique about that second bullet point is the empathetic piece. We don't hear that consistently with searches that we do. That arose more frequently here. People don't feel that anyone's listening in their shoes for who they are.
Able to communicate and develop a communication plan that informs the appropriate people of what they need to know in a timely fashion. And I guess, looking at the data on that, your communication people here are excellent. I think, trying to delve a little bit deep into that, I think there is just a general feeling that maybe from school to school, there may not be the same consistent kind of communication that there could be. And therefore, not only did it come up that there should be great communication, but that the new superintendent should be working with staff members to put together a communication plan that includes all of the internal stakeholders to make this great communication piece. Collaborative team leader who builds strong relationships and develops a sense of community throughout. Again, very common. New superintendent should be a person who is providing opportunities for board development that focuses on their roles, responsibilities, and their relationship with the new superintendent to move the district forward on behalf of the entire community and especially students. So again, this one came up a little bit more than it does in some of the other searches that we've done, in terms of the superintendent and the board working together to put together some professional development where everyone is clear about what their roles and responsibilities are.
Did you hear that across the board?
Yeah, I would have to say we heard that from just about everyone that we spoke with, both internally and also the external individuals with whom we spoke. So it was really a very, very consistent message that we did hear. And again, we've heard it other places, but a little bit more strongly, I would say, here. Able to review past district initiatives and programs and develop a process to evaluate them and assess their continued value need. That's what I call the full plate syndrome, that people feel as if there's too much on their plates and we ought to take a look at maybe something that gets taken off before we add something. Listening to everyone and learning about the district, its history, its strengths, its challenges. People in this district feel, it's such a wonderful community. I can certainly speak to that, they feel that it's such a great community that everyone ought to be a part of it and be listened to, and the new superintendent should have an understanding of how things operate in this district.
If I can interject briefly there, and through the focus groups primarily, we did hear, and it's not necessarily an uncommon thing for us to hear in certain communities like yours, but it seemed to be a little bit more prevalent here, that longing for the old days of long-term superintendents who would spend their entire career here and then retire from here, that they'd like to see that type of thing again, if that's a possibility in today's age.
You guys shared with us at an earlier meeting that the average tenure of a superintendent's approximately 5 years these days.
Well, it's 3 to 5 nationally. It's about 5%, about 5 years for, if you add in suburban districts to that. If you just look at suburban districts, it's more 5 to 7.
Okay, so, but 20 years is aspirational, but likely not realistic.
Unusual, but it happens.
Yes, thank you.
An experienced student-centered educator with a deep understanding of learning at all levels of school district leadership, focuses on what's best for students. So really, again, not uncommon at all, looking for someone who is really student-centered, who's going to understand and provide the best education, best practices for students. Able to understand and balance the financial implications involved when striving to improve the quality of the district's facilities and programming. So you do have, realistic stakeholders who do understand that there are financial limitations to what can be done, but within that, to try to improve the quality of the district's programs and facilities. Active leader who prioritizes visibility in the schools and community. And this thick-skinned thing that came up in a number of the groups is somewhat unique. It's not always expressed that way, but I think people feel as if these days it's just natural that leaders get criticized by one group or another, depending upon what they do, so not get flustered by criticism or disagreement. And then finally, able to improve the district by developing a vision that all stakeholders can embrace and strive to achieve. Again, a very, very ambitious list, but you have a very thoughtful community here, and they're looking at all aspects of this great community and want to find someone who's going to do the best job for you. So really excellent feedback, we feel, and people were very forthcoming to provide it. So that leads us to our next steps. Upon approval of the profile, Gary and I and Diane will start conducting interviews and doing reference checks using the superintendent's profile. After we've done that, we'll recommend candidates to you and you've done a great job already of calendarizing both your first interviews, at which time you will choose your finalists, and then setting up your second interviews that will also include committee interviews, which basically is the stakeholders group. And we understand that that's already been done to a certain extent, that you are down now to just considering four parents and 2 community members. Typically, we would be talking to you about this at our February 25th meeting, when we present the complete packet of information that includes questions and next steps and all kinds of things. In your case, because this is a very accelerated timeline, it's something that you probably should start considering very quickly in terms of selecting the 4 parents. And I know you have 1 from each category, 1 from early childhood, 1 from K-5, 1 from 6-8, and 1 for representing a child with an IEP. But you might want to think about how to do that, how to bring those people forward, and then making that selection process, as well as who the 2 community members might be. Some boards have already had people in mind. Some boards have sent out a call to people.
So if I can cut you off.
Yep.
Sure. So my recommendation to the board is that we send out a community announcement. We have time, and have applications from the community and in these respective areas, and see and filter through the folks who respond to that, and see if they will fulfill one of the categories, 1 of K-5, 1 to 6 to 8, 1 with an IEP, early childhood, and such, and then hopefully we'll be able to fill the needs of this committee. Is there any objection to having a public announcement asking for community volunteers for this?
I don't object to it. I'm more concerned about how once we get those applications in, how we're going to select them, because I'm fearful that we're going to have a bajillion and we're going to need to pick, and I don't want to go through what we did with the SRO situation again. So I don't know how we do that and not run into that same situation.
Well, I think that there's different categories. You have to submit your name to those categories. So someone unlikely will be in all the categories.
Right.
We may have just a few folks for that. I think there probably has to be an accompaniment, let's say 5 lines as to what their background might be. And in all fairness, they would have to be selected based on their ability to sit on this committee. If it comes down to the board by consensus, we'll have to select those members. And we could do that on the 25th.
Or is that a staff, is that an admin issue? Is that outside the, is it better seated with the admin than the board?
I would say that's the board's directive and decision. I would simply say the last time, and I know Dr. Hines has had, with Bernadette's help, they've had a couple different community groups that have been formed, like they had an SEL group that worked with the superintendent. They sent out a survey, said hey, who's interested? There were some categories, why are you interested in volunteering? What are some of the things you've been involved in? What can you bring to this committee? There were some categories where people had to submit, and then there was a selection process. I mean, we can mirror that, but I think to your point that it would be determination of, to the board on how you want to weed through that and determine who would be selected from these kind of resumes.
Just to be candid, I mean, I think we're damned if we do and damned if we don't. We're going to pick somebody, and there's going to be a group of people on Facebook who are going to be screaming at us that we didn't pick that person. And if we do the other one, it's going to be the other way. Frankly, I'd like to take it out of our hands. I personally would like the admin to handle it, because I don't think we win in this situation. Personally, that's my own, just given the vitriol in this town, I don't think we're going to win on that one.
Just one other option is that within the categories, because you are going to have people representing 4 different groups. One other possibility would be to take those people, if you're concerned about that, and just do it via lottery and pick a name out of a hat so that it's fair within that category that you've just picked out.
I've got one more suggestion. There's 2 people in this room, 3 people in this room who are completely unbiased when it comes to that, and I'm looking at them right now. You guys don't know any of the parents in this town.
No, we don't.
You could pick them. Keep us out of it completely. You can look at the apps. As long as they meet the criteria that we set out, we can set the criteria for what we're looking for, and then you guys pick them. It's my personal view. I don't want to be any part of that.
Other thoughts? Is there a consensus to agree with Mr. Biaggi?
I mean, I guess, if it seems like it's going to be too difficult, then, maybe a lottery is the best process that's unbiased, selects one person from each category, and, I don't know if that's the fairest.
As long as they meet the criteria, so we set the criteria, and then as long as they satisfy that, then they're in the hat.
Yeah, I don't know what our criteria will be, but,
Yeah.
as long as obviously they have to fit that category, but beyond that, I'm not, because I think if we start applying criteria, then we're starting to enter into the judgment phase, and so then we start getting into sort of, the concern that you expressed about, how you pick.
I agree with you. I think that we should probably utilize the lottery because I think that ultimately the board has to have some sort of consensus. So if the board conducts the lottery, I think that we're doing our job. I think that we do have to have some criteria. For instance, you have to have lived in Park Ridge for at least a year. I mean, that should be a basis. Simple things. You don't, for instance, 1 K-5, you have to have a child in K to 5. I think that prior experience in an organization might be helpful, any organization. So we could earmark some very basic qualifiers that will help to at least put everybody on the same footing so that at that point the lottery becomes truly fair. So I don't think that we have to make them too specific, Bob, but I think that we have to have some general qualifiers to put everybody on the same footing.
Tony, how about a double dip? So what if it's a parent of a K through 5 who's also SPED? How would we treat that?
Well, I think they need to pick one or the other.
Right. They have to. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's exactly right.
They cannot occupy two.
So when you go public with this and you put it out to the public and you tell them what the criteria is to the public and then they apply,
Yes.
then we do the lottery.
Correct. Gary, you're
Say the only point I was going to mention is that they cannot put any more than one application in per child. Okay, now just hear me out on that. In other words, if they've got somebody in K-5, somebody in 6-8, and a pre-K, they've got 3 children, they should have 3 times the chance of somebody who has 1 child, potentially.
No purchase necessary, void where prohibited.
Exactly. I hate to say it, but I think it's fair.
Yep.
Their name can only be selected once, and if it's selected twice, then put them back and select another person.
Agreed.
So, that being said, I think some of the criteria that we could establish right now, is it all fair that somebody must be a resident of Park Ridge for at least a year?
Or Niles.
What's that?
Or Niles. That's one of your, it's always about.
So is that a bare bones requirement? Any
It's to live within the
objections there?
district, yeah. Very good.
All right. The second requirement would be if whatever one of the categories, you have a child in that category. Is that a fair requirement?
Yes.
Are we agreed on what the 4 categories are? Is that set?
It's right here.
No, I know, but I mean,
No, they're saying
are we all good with that? Do we want to dive deeper, or is that?
Technically, an EC parent many of the kids have, although they're developmental diagnoses largely at early childhood, they're receiving special ed services and then you're having a special ed parent. So
Right.
is that what you're trying to?
Yeah. I just want to make sure we're all
Yeah.
on the same page with that we're good.
Do we want to have a parent that has an IEP, child with an IEP, and we have a parent with a 504?
No.
More importantly, now that Dr. Heinz has brought that up, will we find an early childhood student separate from an early childhood IEP student? Are there a significant, or is there a sufficient number of those students so that we can get a volunteer from?
I don't know.
I don't know how early childhood is staffed. That's why I asked that.
I mean, you have in some of the rooms more of a blended program, but a lot of the kids here are here because they have related service needs.
What if we did, instead of that, a K through 5 middle school non-SPED and then a K through 5 middle school SPED? So four categories. So K through 5 is 1, middle school is 2, K through 5 SPED is 3, middle school SPED is 4.
I actually like that a lot, because I think that addresses a lot of the concerns from the community. And in the one area that I know that we have a large group of students in would be our Channels of Challenge.
Right.
And that is approximately 25 or 30%. So I would like to have a representative from Channels of Challenge to make sure that we're meeting that academic group.
What category does that fit
That's
in?
your gifted Channels of Challenge.
Right, I'm aware what the program is, but I thought were there 2 special education groups you were recommending?
Well, just one, K5 and then middle school. So you'd have, so that, to get to the point of, you've got, again, to the double dipping issue, you've got K through 5 non-SPED, middle school non-SPED, and then you've got 2 other SPED categories, K through 5 and middle school.
Right.
Okay, that's
I was
4
asking,
parents,
Is
but-
Channels of Challenge considered special education?
No.
So you're talking
No,
about
but
adding a
it's
5th
making
parent?
sure that you have wide
Yeah,
representation.
making
Right,
sure
so
you
was
get
somebody
that.
suggesting adding a 5th parent
Yeah, that's what
then?
Tony's suggesting.
I'm suggesting
Okay.
adding somebody from
Just trying to
Channels
understand.
As a 5th?
Or within
potentially?
Gen Ed.
as a 5th.
Oh, okay, as a
Okay.
fifth, okay.
Because if we're going to be all-inclusive, I think that we should be all-inclusive. And
Yeah, I didn't-
because they comprise a good amount of our population, I think that they should be included.
Well, let me, I guess, throw that at you another way. How many kids are in our music program? Should they have somebody?
Yeah.
So I'm just going down the slope of it. At one time, we talked about limiting, that there was a sort of a size we wanted to have for this group. And I think we're going beyond the number I thought we'd agreed on before. And if it's just how many kids participate in a program, there are other programs that we can mention that are at our schools.
Well, the difference is I equate music, which is an encore programming, versus Channels Challenge, which is a completely different delivery of education. So they are, in my mind, separate from an encore programming that everybody has access to.
And I think,
Yeah, I mean, I'm very familiar with both programs, but I think, at its core, Channels of Challenge is reading and math.
Yes.
And so what you're saying is we need to have somebody on here who represents just reading and math being taught at a higher level.
well, let me throw one other thing out there. As a parent of kids in both non-Channels of Challenge and Channels of Challenge, and I hear it constantly, it's the biggest thing I hear from parents in this, is that the kids in the middle in this district get left behind. The kids up here and the kids over here get a lot of support, and the kids in the middle, which are the vast majority of them, don't. And I want to make sure that if we're going to have 4 or 5 or however many people giving their input, that those kids in the middle, again, are not left behind in this discussion. So my thought of having those K through 5 and middle school 2 parents, I don't want them to be Channels of Challenge, and I don't want them to be SPED. I want 2 of them in the middle there to capture those middle kids. Then we've got 2 for SPED, and then maybe to Tony's idea, have this one that's capturing the Channels of Challenge as well, too.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of get to the thing of where, which was in some of the stuff we just heard about, is that then, we're picking subjects out, and are we tilting the group then one way or another based on doing that?
Well, I understand your concern, and certainly I'm not making a decision, so why don't we get a consensus and see what folks think?
Tony, can I ask one more question, though, just so I understand? So you guys were talking about 6 total. 4 would be these parents made up of what we just talked about, and then 2 would be community members at large that are definitely not parents of kids, like actively not parents?
That's what the board had
I think
talked
that's what we
about
discussed
previously.
Yeah.
Say, that's what you decided.
Right, that's what we, so, I mean, we could change our own idea on that and go to 5 parents and 1 non-parent, and still get to the 6 number, Bob, if that's, if we're concerned about not blowing it up.
Because this group is already at 17 people, right?
16.
6.
Should be 16 with the current
Okay.
number.
Yeah.
And if we add Channels of Challenge, it becomes 17.
Yeah.
So Fred, what do you think? Let's get a consensus.
I don't know, I'm not swayed on the Channels of Challenge.
All right, Larry?
I'm not swayed on the channels of challenging.
Tom?
I feel the more inclusive we are, the better, so... Sorry. I feel the more inclusive that we are, the better, so I don't see how it would affect us to not have them there.
I say do it. Rick?
Yeah, I'm for it.
All right, so it's 3-2. Mark?
Affirmative on the Channels of Challenge.
All right, 4. Bob, I assume it's no.
No, I thought we were, when we talked before, we talked about the size of the group, the time we have, sort of, the involvement with the interview process, that I thought we were already stretching the group beyond the size that you normally see in these, things by more than just an extra person. So I wouldn't be in favor of expanding the group for that reason.
You would not?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So to Bob's final thoughts there about expanding by 1, we do have 2 community members, and so the final thought to get consensus on the board is, do we add 1 to the group, or can we maintain the same number by decreasing community members? Let's start on Bob's side. What are your thoughts, Bob? Should we reduce by 1 by eliminating a community member, or just increase the whole focus group by 1 individual?
I mean, I'd probably maintain the community members, just because I think there could be people who have had children in the district, and had large number of years of experience with that, and with the education process, and, they could have valuable inputs. So I seek to maintain it too.
Okay. Mark?
I would keep it at 2 as well. Keep the 2 community members and then add the additional challenge person.
Rick?
Question about the community members. Had we defined, like, do we want one that's a former parent, one that never had a kid in the district, or are we open to just whomever? Had we kind of identified that?
We have not. That's the whole exercise that we're going through right now, is to identify these individuals.
Well, because I guess that goes to my concern, is that if we're really hell-bent on having maybe a community member who formerly had a kid in this district, but it was 20 years ago, and that's important to us, then maybe we do need to, if this was just more of a, we want to get a constituent taxpayer who doesn't currently have a dog in the race, I don't feel as strongly about having multiple ones, so.
All right, so why don't we back off and hold that consensus vote for a second and start on Fred's side. And Fred, do you have any requirements, or what level of openness will you have your community members? Could they have been part of District 64? Do you want them absolutely apart from District 64? Or it really doesn't matter as long as their children currently are not in the district?
I don't think it really mattered to me as long as they did not have children in the district and we gave them an opportunity to weigh in. That was really all that was important to me.
As long as currently they don't have children in the district.
Yeah.
Larry?
I'm just, from the community, I'm just looking for 2 taxpayers that don't fit those other categories.
So somebody in the community that currently does not have children in the district.
Right.
Good. Tom?
I agree with Larry.
Okay, I agree. Rick?
I'm good with one or two I'm good with either one or two of the taxpayers, but with one condition to what the definition of them, and that is I don't also want them to be employed by the district or to have any financial connection to the district whatsoever. So if they're not going to have a kid currently in the district, they also can't be getting a paycheck one way or the other from the district.
Yes.
Good? Good. Yeah, good. Mark?
Yes.
Agreed.
Okay, good. So we have the definition of community members now. With that being said, let's go back to Bob. And now that you have the full definition, are you still in agreement to retain your 2 community members?
Yes.
And Mark?
Yes.
Rick? Yeah, me too.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I think we have our focus group pretty well set at this point. All right, so before we go any further,
Could you repeat the makeup of the parents?
the parents who will be asked to join this focus group, there'll be an invitation extended by the district to the parents. The requirements to be on the focus group is that they will have to have lived in Park Ridge for a year. They will have to have a child in the district in one of 5 categories, 1 in K5, 1 in K8, 1 in K5 with an IEP, 1 in K8 with an IEP, and 1 parent with a child in channels of challenge. And they will need to provide a short paragraph of 3 to 5 sentences as to why they feel that they can contribute to this endeavor. And the community members are individuals who currently who reside in Park Ridge, who are not employed by District 64, who have no financial interest in District 64, and who currently have no children in District 64.
And Tony, just to clarifying, just for recording purposes, I think when you said that, you said K5 and then you said K8. I think you meant K5 and 6 to 8 as the different categories.
Yes.
I have it written down. It'll be.
And if I said that,
I've got it.
thanks for catching this up. And before we go a little bit further, because we want to have our final discussion as far as our interviews and how that's what that's going to look like for the board, let me go to the audience and see if there's anybody who would like to make a comment on what they've heard so far as the superintendent profile, or any comment on the community members or the parents. I'm not seeing any, so let me direct the next comments to our consultants here. So from what I understand, going forward, you're going to be collecting applications from the wide audience, and you'll be filtering through the applications. And will there, and I'm a little fuzzy on this, that's why I'm asking, so at our next board meeting, the regular board meeting of the 25th, is there information that you intend on sharing with us on that meeting? And that would be the list of individuals, is that the idea?
Correct.
All right, now, we will, at the 25th, the board will have to make a decision, at least some cursory decision. Could you describe that?
So what we will be presenting to you after we've done our due diligence of screening and checking references is we will be presenting to you somewhere probably 6 or 7 of the best candidates who fit the profile, who have the level of background and experience necessary for this position. So we will be presenting those candidates, and you will have a full packet of information, describes everything about them. There'll be an application, there'll be a letter of introduction, there'll be reference letters, and everything else. We'll also be providing in that packet possible questions for you. We'll give you a sample of questions that have been used by other boards in several different categories, so you will be able to choose from them or not choose from them as you see fit. We will describe the stakeholders committee probably right around the time that we're presenting that information to you. will also be meeting with the head of the chair of the stakeholders committee to go over with that person how that whole operation is going to work in terms of documents and so on. And then, what have I forgotten, Gary? That will be
No, beyond the stakeholders, then just the specific times that you're looking to meet with candidates. We set all that up because then we will be arranging the interviews for you for that following week, which is when you'll begin interviewing. We present them on Monday the 25th, and I believe it's on Monday already, March 4th, that you begin interviewing. So we arrange all of those interviews.
Is it intended that all candidates that you present on the 25th will be interviewed between the 4th and 5th of March? Or, so whomever you, so is there a number? Is there a finite number? Are you going to present 20 names or 10 names or?
probably it'd be somewhere between 6 and 8, depending upon, you know, the total pool right now is 30. At least the last time I looked, the total pool was 30. But within that pool, there's certainly some people who, based on the needs of your district, based on the profile, and also based on their backgrounds and experience, would not at all be good fits for this. So we'll be presenting somewhere between 6 and 8, and then it will be up to the board to say if, you know, there are some among them that you're not interested in interviewing them. That will be your decision. But typically the board interviews 6 of the candidates.
All right. We have a comment here.
Thank you. Mickey Tessia, parent of 2 children, D64. I just had a question about the profile because I noticed that both the focus group summaries and then also the online survey responses identified someone with attributes that are high in special education as being important, and then that notion didn't carry over into the profile that we saw. I know there's a bullet on sort of having someone that's strong in curriculum instruction for all kids, but I didn't know if that would have, you know, necessarily been inclusive of somebody who also had deep knowledge of special education. And I guess the question for the board is that, in terms of profile, is that someone that you are looking for, and should that be included in the actual profile itself?
I think that's a separate conversation that the board has to have. And we probably will have that conversation on the 25th when we hear more information as far as who is being portrayed to us. Yes.
Joan Sandrick, and back to the committee. Especially important for the 2 community positions. I just want to be clear. Are you going to do some kind of a press release to get the word out for those of us who do not have children in school? I mean, you have a means to contact the parents, but will you be getting press releases out? Will there be some kind of notification on the board district's website? Will there be an application on the district's website? And to be clear, the 5 parent positions and the 2 community positions will be selected by lottery. Did I hear that correctly? Is that the consensus from the board?
Yes.
I know that's a multiple question. Sorry about that.
So we haven't had time to talk through this at all. We're kind of taking it piecemeal, but we will utilize the same avenues for this that we have utilized in the past for board committees and applications for previous superintendent searches. So Bernadette, I think you're here.
She is.
If you you could shake your head. I mean, we will have something on our website. We will have something going out to our, sorry?
You will do everything at this time.
Yes. And so specifically, though, to address individuals, members of the community, who are currently not part of the district, meaning without children actually in our schools, We have, I assume, we have emails and we have avenues to reach out to other members in the community who are not part, who don't have children in our schools.
Well, it would be a press release, and then it would be anybody from the community that is signed on to get our e-news after board meetings. Those are really two big vehicles beyond the district webpage, where we created a superintendent search pull down.
Social media.
And then social media.
And social media.
Okay, but there will be an application form on the website. Okay, thank you.
All right. Yes.
May I make just one comment? I didn't know if you were going to be responding to people or not, but just to the parent who was interested in special services.
I was going to get back to that, yes.
Okay. We will have, as part of our team, Dr. Diane Rossi, who is one of the local, state, and national experts in delivering services for children with special needs. So special needs children's issues will certainly be addressed in our screening process.
Good. So that brings us to one final thing regarding the screening process, at least in my mind, and that is, do we need to establish the date of that focus group discussion? Or is that focus group discussion really going to happen with just the two finalists?
Just with the two finalists.
Two finalists?
Yes.
Okay. And if the board is going to be meeting with those two finalists on the 11th and 12th, which would be Monday and Tuesday following, when would that focus group discussion, would you envision that happening on both days? One individual would have their focus group discussion, and the next day that individual has their focus group discussion?
Correct.
Okay. I just want to map it out and lay it out for
Do
everybody.
we have times set for those?
We do. Yeah.
We already have time set for those, which would be prior to in the day, right?
I have a couple of questions, and I want to go all the way back to the profile. I, too, was watching all the input, priorities, characteristics, and watching it flow down to the new superintendent profile, and I had marked down special education in the background. The other thing I wanted to ask you was, when these new superintendent profiles, you go back and look at other districts that you've done and formed a new superintendent profile. Is there anything there that's not here?
Anything there that's not here? Yeah, in some districts, I would say much stronger emphasis on budgeting and financial issues, typically in districts that have much more financial issues than your district. There are a lot of them where that comes out very, very prominently in the profiles. It really didn't come out that strongly in your profile. So I would say one of the issues would be financial issues that did not come out as strongly in yours as it has in others. Anything else, Gary, you can think of?
No, I think you had more in yours than others have, but I don't see things that were missing from yours that others may have had that would be worth consideration.
Okay. I think the public is aware that our district currently versus 10 years ago, 12 years ago, is in a much better position financially, and with constant observance and diligence and just doing what should be done, I think we will continue to maintain a good fiscal position. And I'm very, very, very proud of the prior work, of the work of the prior boards to get us to this point. But that's not to say it should be ignored. And we have a terrific CSBO with us who is helping maintain and steer the ship. And as long as we can maintain, I think we'll be in good shape. Yeah. So is there anything else that you would like to add I think we're good for up until the
Look forward to
25th.
seeing you on the 25th.
Yep. Is there any further comments the board would like to make?
So we don't need to take, oh, I'm sorry, Bob, go ahead.
Sorry.
Just to confirm for everybody, so when we do the interviews, sort of, we had talked earlier for sort of the best interests of the candidates and ourselves in getting the best candidates. The actual interviews themselves, that'll all be done during a closed session process. Right? So just everybody understands that.
That would be all interviews.
Right.
Yes,
Yes.
not only just of the two finalists, but
Yeah.
also of the other. The
previous ones.
Right. Any
Go
other
ahead, Rick
comments?
had something, I think.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was right now.
Thank you.
Gary?
One other piece, Mr. Borelli, and that is, now that you've seen the entire report as well as just what we consider to be the profile, which of those would you like to see on your district's website? Would you like to see the entire report provided, or would you just like to see the superintendent's profile listed, which are basically the 11 or 12 characteristics that we identified?
I think the whole thing.
Everything. Everything.
Yeah. Everything you got.
Sure.
I remember my question before. We're not taking formal action on the profile, right? It's not on our agenda, we can't. But we're not ratifying, we're not adopting, we're not doing nothing.
It's a recommendation by a consultant.
You don't have to approve to accept it or receive it, or
Yep, thank you.
you guys talk about it at other meetings.
Joan, you had a final comment?
I do, thank you. It might be helpful if I might suggest on the application to serve on the committee, if the dates that people are expected to be present are on the application, so that it's right in front of them and they know what the time commitment is.
Reasonable.
Very good idea.
And that they agree to be present, because it is a big commitment.
It's reasonable, Joan.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, if there's not any more comments or questions or suggestions, I'll make a motion to close the meeting. We'll meet again on the 25th. The second?
Second.
Fred's got the second, starting with Bob.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.